met was in October. So it has been several months. So we were discussing, let me go directly to the topic. Maybe a little bit of recapitulation. We were discussing the Yama and Niyama in a brief way. Of course, in the sutras, it comes in much more detail. Each Yama and Niyama will be discussed. But now we will discuss it just in a superficial way, just to know the contents of the Raj Yoga proper or Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. Because we will see that apart from Yama and Niyama, Swami Vivekananda in his introduction discusses the concept of prana a lot. Because before discussing pranayama, he wants us to uh, clearly understand the concept of prana. That is why you'll find so many uh, pages he has devoted to prana, which will later on be useful when we try to understand what pranayama is. As you all know, there are 8 steps. Ashtanga Yoga means 8 steps. And after Yama, Niyama, we have asana, then we have pranayama, and then we start with the next 4 steps. So, the preliminary preparations, we discussed this, but I'll just repeat what Swamiji wants, what is the goal of Raj Yoga. Because even to understand what Yama, Niyama, and asana, pranayama, you should be clear of what the ultimate goal is. These are steps. Steps are not, they may lead us to the goal, but they are not an end in itself. Otherwise, you'll get stuck at asana and you'll consider Raj Yoga to be yogasanas, and then your whole life will be spent in doing asanas. Similarly with Yama and Niyama. So, Yama and Niyama, which we'll discuss now, at least we'll make a list of what Yama and Niyama means. They are rules, but they are to be practiced simultaneously with the other steps. You should not think that first we'll get mastery over Yama and Niyama, then we'll get mastery over Asana. It's not like climbing one step after another. It's not in that sense that these steps Ashtanga Yoga is to be understood. All the steps can be practiced simultaneously, except of course dhyana and samadhi, because they are very difficult. So whatever we do, whatever spiritual practices we follow, you will find that the first 6 steps, at least before dhyana, which is 7th, and samadhi, which is 8th, which is the end of Ashtanga Yoga, that is the last stage, last step. All the 6 steps we are directly or indirectly trying to practice. When we sit for meditation, maybe we are doing dharana or even pratyahara, which is the 5th step, or we are maybe doing some kind of pranayama. We are handling our prana. We may not do pranayama as it is taught, that is breathing exercises, but the control of prana, not only the main prana which is breathing, but there are other 4 pranas, that is also pranayama. Ayama means to control. To control the prana, all the pancha pranas is pranayama. So that is why we have to understand what prana means. It is not just breath. Breath is one of the pranas. So there are 5 pranas, and so directly or indirectly, when we are doing our spiritual practices, we are doing a little bit of pranayama, we are doing a little bit of asana. The very fact that we are sitting in a steady position, not moving and not allowing the body to be restless, forget the mind, not allowing the body to be restless itself is a great achievement, and that is known as asana, to put it in very simple terms. So also we will find that Yama and Niyama is not something we have to, no doubt, we have to follow all the Yamas and Niyamas to the extent we can. Because you see, all the Yamas and Niyamas, just one example I can give you, Satya for example. Now truth, you can speak truth or hold on to truth like Sri Ramakrishna did. He never spoke falsehood even by mistake. So that kind of holding on to Satya may be very difficult for most of us. So also brahmacharya, aparigraha, to some extent, to the extent we can follow, depending on what vocation of life we are in, we have to practice according to our means. So it is the more we practice, obviously, the more benefit we'll get. It is same thing is true about asana, about pranayama, about pratyahara, about dharana, about dhyana, which is very difficult. We cannot say that we are practicing dhyana. The very definition of dhyana will tell us how difficult it is. What is that dhyana? And of course, samadhi is out of question right now. So, to the extent we can practice the yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, all the different steps, we can do them simultaneously. Throughout the day, we'll be doing something or the other. Whether we know it or not, we are doing some kind of pranayama. When we are sitting quietly, when we are not restless, our prana is regulated. Our nerves are calm. That is the Vyana Vayu. Vyana prana is very active and very controlled. So also our breath becomes steady when we are not restless. But when we are extremely busy and trying to be involved in so many things, you will see our breathing itself becomes irregular. Even a disturbance, even if you don't practice asana, it is difficult to practice pranayama. Because the prana, nervous energy, if you keep on fiddling, if a person is restless, he cannot sit quietly. To sit quietly is asana, in any posture. Just to sit sthiram sukham asanam. That is the definition of asana. The asana is nothing but any posture that allows you to sit quietly in a steady posture for a very long period of time. If that happens, then you will find pranayama becomes easy. But if one is restless, one cannot practice pranayama. So now, what are these preliminary preparations? Even before we start with yama and niyama, we discussed that was the subject matter of the whole introduction. So the goal should be clear. The goal is to attain that fine state of perception. The goal of yoga or Patanjali's yoga or Raj Yoga is attain that subtle, fine state of perception. We are perceiving things in a very gross way. What we see around us is our reading of the world as it is. We make so many mistakes in judgment. We can't even judge a person, our own friend or relative. We can't judge him fully. So forget judging the whole universe or the whole scheme of the universe. So we perceive things according to our capacity. For example, if a person is very fearful, full of fear, and is traveling in the dark at night, it's very dark, and in the shadow, in a slight, there is a small light, and he sees something, and he thinks of ghost, and the heart starts beating, and fear comes. Though there may not be any ghost, it may be just a stump, or it may just be a tree, a dry tree. But that fear has changed his perception. He actually sees ghosts, or he imagines that he's seeing ghosts. So that is how our perceptions change. But the goal of yoga is to perceive things as they are. So you have to make your perception finer and finer and finer, and don't jump into conclusions. Don't make any judgment without seeing a thing properly, going deep into that. That means making your perception finer and finer. That is one of the goals of yoga, so that we can see our own mental states. We are not carried away by our mental states. We are not carried away by our emotions. We are not carried away by uh, so many things that disturb us. We are in a position to just watch our mind and watch how our mind reacts to people and surroundings, and make a calm judgment. Make a judgment based on correct perception, right perception. So then the second stage, Swamiji says, you perceive correctly, then see how the senses, how the sensation that you see, that you hear is traveling and reaching the brain. It may sound impossible because we never think about it. We don't even think how we react to things. We don't even have the patience to see how we get angry. We just get angry because we just react. Our mind is in such a highly reactive state that it just knows how to react. Somebody says something and we react. And then we repent, but we will react first. So we have not seen, we have not perceived how our mind is reacting to how the sensations are coming in. Somebody speaks something, I don't even bother to listen what he says. Immediately I react, and then that causes problems to both of us. So that is how the sensation is traveling, how the mind is receiving it, how it is going to the buddhi. That means how you use your reason to find out, what am I seeing the right thing? Am I reacting properly? So to make these choices, the buddhi should be developed. So the sensations which come to the mind should not immediately give a reaction. Then we are not trained. Our buddhi has not been awakened. If our buddhi has not been awakened, then we will not make the right choices, right decisions. So for that you have to perceive how the sensations are traveling, and then the buddhi should watch everything very peacefully, very calmly, without any vrittis in the mind. Just allow some vrittis and then allow your mind to take a decision based on your buddhi, what your buddhi tells you. Then Swamiji says, for these things, to enable you to see things properly in uh, clear terms, and not just allow the reactive mind to react to every situation around you, it requires a lot of training. It requires a lot of preparations. It Swamiji also adds one more thing: food regulations are necessary. Now, by food here, he means not only the food that we take through the mouth, anything that comes in, ahara. That ahara means literally anything that your senses take, not just through the mouth. Through the mouth, you are taking food, but through the eyes also, they have their own food, the sight, the things that they see. So every organ feeds on the perceptions that it sees. So we are always taking food. So food regulations are necessary. But here in Raj Yoga, they give a lot of importance to what we eat, because our nervous energy and everything will be determined. That is why some of the serious practitioners, when they practice ahimsa, they literally practice it. They eat vegetarian food. Even Swami Vivekananda was once asked. He said, I know vegetarian food, eating certain kinds of food have a calming effect on the mind. So you have to be very uh, discriminative. Your food regulations are very necessary. And one general rule, which is there in the Bhagavad Gita also, avoid all extremes. Don't be excessively joyful, always trying to make crack jokes, or always trying to laugh, and no seriousness. But don't be too serious. So avoid extremes. Buddhism, they have taken this idea from yoga, and or maybe yoga has taken, Patanjali's yoga has taken ideas from Buddha. But in any case, Buddha's teaching also, like the Bhagavad Gita, is to avoid extremes. Don't eat too much, don't eat too less. Don't talk too much, don't talk too less. That is, avoid extremes. So, to maintain a balance, all our scriptures, including Patanjali's yoga, gives a general rule: observe food regulations. That includes other types of food, not just the food that we eat through the mouth, but primarily it is the food that we eat, which is meant here. And also avoid extremes. So don't be extremely light-hearted always. Sometimes one has to be serious, but one has to balance it. You cannot be serious all the time. You cannot be uh, joking and laughing all the time. Just maintain a balance. If you see Sri Ramakrishna's life, you will find he was never a sad man. But that doesn't mean he was not serious. He would laugh when the time came to laugh. He would crack jokes. In the gospel, you see so much of laughing used to take place. But after that, if you see him, he will simply vanish. He used to go to Panchavati and go to the most quietest place available in Dakshineshwar. That is, he liked solitude. At the same time, when people came, he did not avoid. So he avoided extremes. Extreme solitude, yes. When he was meditating, he went into solitude. He did not like to see anyone, meet anyone. But that doesn't mean that he was one-sided. He did not believe in extremes. So that is another important thing. Now we come to the 8 steps of Raj Yoga, which we discussed last time. So first comes Yama. We are not going to discuss in great detail because each sutra, when we come to the actual sutras, Ahimsa, Asteya, Brahmacharya, Parigraha, everything will be discussed and that definition will be more appropriate. But now it is just a translation I am giving you. Ahimsa is non-killing. Now, to put it briefly, it doesn't mean physical killing also. It means mental himsa also. Mentally, you may try to kill or try to destroy or try to damage somebody. That also is some kind of himsa. Now, Satya, holding on to truth as far as possible. As I said, all these yamas and niyama, which will follow now. The first step is yama, 5 yamas and 5 niyamas. They are to be practiced according to one's capacity. So, there is no such rule that this has to be practiced first or this has to be, it has to be practiced simultaneously. Whenever you need to do it, whenever you need to follow truth, you follow truth. Whenever you need to follow asteya, non-stealing. Non-stealing means not that it's not stealing as such, but taking things which do not belong to you. Though the rules of asteya are very strict, they don't keep anything that even Sri Ramakrishna could not keep. It's not that he stole. Somebody else brought some lemon from there was a person who had told him that you please take lemons from my tree. And that day, that land was sold where the lemon trees grew. But Sri Ramakrishna was so sensitive that day when the sevak brought the lemons, he could not taste it. He could not even drink anything made of that lemon. So he says, I don't know why, but I can't take this. Then later on they found that on that day, the ownership of that farm had changed hands. So it no longer belonged to the person who had given permission to the sevak to take lemon from his farm. So see, Sri Ramakrishna was so much, he held on to truth to the last letter, to the last word, you can say, because he was absolutely truthful, absolutely, he followed all the yama and niyama. But the general rule here is we can follow only to a certain extent, depending on our circumstances, depending on our capacity, and depending on the goal that we set in front of us. So people may ask, one of the questions was that if Raj Yoga insists on brahmacharya, which is the third one now, ahimsa, satya, asteya, non-stealing, not taking anything that does not belong to you. Even if you take it, you better return it. So it's not a good idea to keep anything that doesn't belong to you. Not just stealing, it doesn't just mean stealing. Similarly, brahmacharya means following the path of Brahman. So one of the important conditions which every religion insists upon is purity. To the extent one can follow it. That is, brahmacharya means following the path of Brahman, anything that obstructs that, any energy that is dissipated in the process, because we have a limited source of energy in our uh, psychophysical system. So there is we have to restrict certain things if we want to achieve something. That is why all the religions, great religions, insisted upon that. But that doesn't mean that householders cannot practice. These are things that can be practiced according to one's means, according to one's capacity, and more importantly, according to the goal that one has set for oneself. So, householder has his own goal, a monk has his own goal, a monk has his own way or etiquette or system, his own swadharma. A kshatriya has his own swadharma. Similarly, with ahimsa also. Swamiji says the same food will not be suitable for everyone. A kshatriya has to fight battles. He has to, maybe if he eats non-vegetarian food, he may not be strictly practicing but ahimsa. But at the same time, because it is his food, according to his swadharma, he is eating his food. But Swamiji also says, one who is given to meditation, a quiet life, and he doesn't need any physical strain, I mean, he doesn't have to strain himself physically, then vegetarian diet may be more helpful because it is more sattvic. Even in the vegetarian diet, if you see the Bhagavad Gita, there is very clear distinction between the food that you eat, even if it is vegetarian. There is tamasic vegetarian food, there is rajasic vegetarian food, there is sattvic vegetarian food. So, if you read the Bhagavad Gita, you will find different types of sattva guna, rajo guna. Not only the behavior, but also the food is discussed. What 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 leads to uh, ahimsa? It varies from person to person. Also varies according to one's swadharma. So the food of a kshatriya is not the food of a brahmin, is not the food of a worker who has to work very hard in the farm, uh, farmland. So these things have to be taken in a very relative way according to one's swadharma. Then aparigraha, non-receiving of any gifts. Now asteya means not using that which is not yours. It is indirectly something like stealing, because you possess something which is really not yours. Whereas aparigraha is a voluntary refusal of taking gifts. Because when you take gifts from anyone, maybe the person who is giving gift, maybe he may be very unselfish, or some may be very selfish. But how are we to know what is the intention behind the gift? So that is why they say it is better not take a risk and accept any gift, because we do not know the intention. We do not know the intention behind that gift. If there is a selfish motive, that gift can be harmful. Because you see, normally people expect something in return. So you are bound by that condition, or you are bound by that transaction. So somebody gives you, says, no, it is a very unselfish gift. But if there is a hidden motive, then one has to suffer, because we have taken, that's why aparigraha is also to the extent we can follow. Of course, sometimes when some dear person who's so dear to you gives you some gift, you cannot refuse, because we know for certain that this gift has no tags or no conditions attached. It is just pure out of love. So that you have to decide. Aparigraha also changes according to the situation, according to the person, according to the dharma one follows. So all these things, swadharma, it changes. So non-receiving of gift. So these are ahimsa, satya, asteya, brahmacharya, aparigraha. These are the 5 yamas. Niyamas, they are, you see, the yama and niyama, the subtle distinction is yama means something that you do or don't do, the rules that are applicable in your interaction with other people. That is yama. Niyama means they are internal controls. So you can safely say yama means external control. External control means externally you don't kill anyone, you don't speak untruth, you don't steal, you practice brahmacharya. So they are in relationship with the world outside you, and it is based on certain things which are which concern the external control of the mind in an external way. But there are certain things which are known only to yourself. It is known as internal control. That is known as niyama, like shaucha. Now, the idea of cleanliness is an attitude. Whether it is physical cleanliness, you can see. But some people are mentally, they want to keep their mind free from impure thoughts. So, shaucha means internal cleanliness also. You don't unnecessarily uh, uh, eat things which for your subjectively they are unclean for you. Like for example, something that has fallen down, and there are some people don't even hesitate, they'll just pick it up and eat. But some people will say no, it has uh, been contaminated with some kind of dust, so I'll rather not. Or somebody comes and eats, they call it uchista, somebody who has eaten something. So it is polluted with the vibrations of that person. So I don't partake of that. People think it is a superstition, but it is not so. It is like too much of shaucha. Some people make too much of shaucha. They go to the extreme of shaucha, not touching this, not touching that, not touching with the right hand. That extreme is not what is meant here. It is cleanliness in general, mental as well as physical cleanliness. Then santosha, that is contentment. This is also not in with respect to something outside. It is internal control, not external control, like yama. It is niyama. Your niyama means santosha. The contentment is an internal feeling. Now, there's no way I know whether you are content with one morsel of rice or 10 morsels of rice. You may make a show or say that, no, no, I'm happy, I'm content. But are you really content? That is known only internally. Or possession of wealth. A person may say, no, 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 I don't need jewelry, I don't need these things. But it may be just verbal. In his mind, he may have a desire, but because he doesn't have it, he will say, I'm content with what I have. So contentment cannot be judged by others. It has to be an internal judgment we make on our state of mind. That is why Swamiji says we should be able to uh, make judgments based on what we feel, what we practice. So when we practice something and our relationship with the world outside, it is known as yama. When there are certain things which are internal, it is known as niyama. So santosha is contentment, tapas is austerity, tapah swadhyaya. Tapas is austerity. Austerity also, now it is not just external austerity. It is some kind of self-denial. So what is tapasya? Tapasya means your mind will tell you, do this, and you just restrain your mind, you just give it a thought and say, no, why should I do it? Just because somebody is telling me, or my mind is telling me, or 10 people are telling me, should I do it? So it's a kind of internal control which you exercise on yourself. It is called as internal discipline, self-imposed discipline. Not because somebody tells you. Niyama doesn't mean, though we use niyama in a very, very broad sense, that we have made some niyamas, you have to follow it. Because somebody has made a rule. That's not the idea. These are rules which we make for ourselves. It is based on internal conviction that I have to follow austerity by denying myself things which I don't need. I really don't need it. So why not practice a little bit of austerity? I mean, not eating, like fasting. Fasting is one type of austerity. Because if we are very greedy about food, then the moment you see food, if you eat, it's trying to impose some kind of self discipline by not eating. So you don't eat. Maybe some people practice it for health reasons. It is known as intermittent fasting and all those things. But that is not what is meant here. Tapasya here means denying something. You have that, but you don't want to take it because you feel that these things are not necessary for you to survive or to uh, be happy. So, denial, these small denials, if you go to extremes, that is why Sri Krishna says too much of tapasya, like Buddha also tried. He tried not to eat for days and days together until he fell sick and he was just about to die when that Sujata gives the kheer, the pious, and somehow she saves his life, then he understood that I have to follow the middle path. So that is what Swamiji is saying. Extremes are bad. So, but some kind of austerity, self-denial is good. Then comes Swadhyaya, study. Swadhyaya normally means study. So it can be any study, but here it means something specific. So study of one's own self. Swa Adhyaya. Adhyaya means to study. Swadhyaya means to study the nature of the self. Who are we? What is the goal of our life? What are we born for? What uh, what is the nature of death? All these things comes through Swadhyaya. So that is why they say you have to do Swadhyaya of the scriptures because they guide you properly. You can even do mathematics. That is also Swadhyaya. But that will not yield because that is not the science of the self. So Swadhyaya here means study the science that will give you the knowledge of your own self. Swa Adhyaya. Then last niyama comes is Ishvara Pranidhana, that is surrender to God. So here Ishvara means different to different people. That is why it is not speaking of a personal God or an impersonal God. Ishvara, who is the all-pervading reality in this universe, is also known as Ishvara, if you go by the definition of Vedanta. But here it generally means what you consider as God, whether it is personal or impersonal, because Sankhya, on which this Patanjali's yoga is based, there are two types of Sankhya. Sa Ishvara, Seshvara Sankhya, and Nirishvara Sankhya. So there are two schools where one Sankhya says we don't need to accept the reality of Ishvara or God. Another says, they say just control of the mind. So Nirishvara Sankhya is something like Buddhism. Buddhism doesn't believe in God. They say we don't need it. It's just the control of the mind that you have to take care of. Whereas Seshvara Sankhya, Sa Ishvara Sankhya, which believes in Ishvara, is Ishvara Pranidhana. They believe that you have to surrender or do self-surrender, surrender your ego to God. That's the idea. Now the third step is asana. As I told you, we will come to the definition when we discuss the sutras. But asana simply means sthiram and sukham. Two things are there. Sthiram, sukham, asanam. That is the simplest definition. So sthira, that posture which makes your body steady, mind becomes steady afterwards. Pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, and all those things. But even to make the body steady, we have to practice a discipline which is known as asana. It is yogasanas are different postures, squatting position, but everywhere if you see, it helps you to make you sthira physically and mentally, both. If you are physically steady and physically happy, happy in the sense sthiram sukham asanam. If you are steady but it is full, giving you full of it is giving you a lot of pain, then it is not an asana. Asana should make you feel relaxed, sukham, and sthiram. Steady, but at the same time happy and pleasant. You should feel pleasant, because if you are forcing yourself to do asana, then you may be sthira, but you may be in terrible pain. If you say, for example, you sit cross-legged, and after a certain time you are feeling so much pain, but still you continue to sit because you don't have practice. It's not that sitting cross-legged is impossible. If you practice over a period of time, one doesn't have that pain. He manages to sit for 2-3 hours without pain. But in the beginning, it may be difficult. So, sthiram, it any posture that makes you steady, and sthira, and any posture that makes you happy or doesn't disturb or torture the mind. If you torture your body and if it causes pain, then you can't meditate. So that is asana. Then we have pranayama, uh, which is the control of prana, which will be discussed now in the next class, maybe. This class, I don't know whether we'll have time, but we'll start the idea, because Swami Vivekananda does not discuss much about yama and niyama, because he knows anyway the Yoga Sutras will come. In the Sutras, though there is only one sutra for each, one for asteya, one for ahimsa. There's only one sutras, whereas for prana there are many sutras. So that is why he wants to discuss it, because he wants to make sure that this concept of prana is understood, because just before starting pratyahara, we have this pranayama, which is far superior than asana. So yogasana, till yogasana, it is mostly physical, partly mental, but after pranayama, after asana, it becomes you are dealing with not only the body but the power or prana that runs the body. So that is a much subtler thing. It is more subtle, of course, not as subtle as the mind. Ultimately, it is the mind and the thoughts that are mainly dealt with in Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. But prana is far superior than asana. So that is why control of prana, which is the fourth step, is discussed. Then comes pratyahara. So in the simple meaning of pratyahara is restraint of the senses from their objects. There are objects around us. Now, there are a lot of internal disturbances, thoughts because of past samskaras. If we don't practice pratyahara, then we'll add more and more objects to our already confused mind. Our mind is already confused with so many old memories, memories of our childhood, memories of our younger days, memories of our past lives. They are enough to cause a lot of turbulence in our mind. But the fifth step, that is pratyahara, Patanjali says, at least don't add new objects. So, restraint of the senses from going towards object is known as pratyahara. So before we even start dharana, that is concentration, before we can concentrate on our ishta or anything, you are advised to practice pratyahara. That is why they say nirjan vas, going into solitude means solitude will force you to not come in contact with the disturbing objects and add to the already disturbed mind. Already it is disturbed and restless because of our internal problems. Most of the internal problems are not because of our present situation. They are because of past memories, something that has happened in the past, some quarrel, some misunderstanding. So whatever has happened in the past is accumulated. It is already there, though we are not always aware. It will suddenly come up as thoughts, as painful memories, painful dreams. So all these things are already there. So there are a lot of objects, lot of people, lot of samskaras which we have to deal with. But that problem will increase if we add newer things, add new problems. You don't realize that these things may be simple and will not give you an idea that they'll be problematic later on. But the more we get engaged, that is why Sri Ramakrishna says before even starting meditation, taking the name of the Lord, you have to withdraw yourself and go to some Nirjanvas. Nirjanvas means no more fresh objects. There you have the freedom to deal with your own problems and your own mind in a calm way. Because if you go on adding newer objects, if you don't practice pratyahara, so there are many ways of practicing pratyahara. One is restraint of the senses from their object. Ideally, it would be that in any situation you should be able to restrain. But for a beginner, as Thakur said, a young plant should be surrounded by a fence so that the goats and the other cattle don't come and eat it. But after it grows into a big tree, then the fence is no longer necessary. Similarly, solitude is necessary in the beginning because new objects will come and disturb us. It's not just the objects, people also. People are also objects. Anything that is that conveys some information through the senses. So restraining the senses from their objects is pratyahara. We have not even started concentration. And forget dhyana. So dharana. Then comes dharana, fixing the mind on a spot. Now you may fix it for 1 second, you may fix it for 2 seconds, you may fix it for... When you do 12 seconds, they say you come to a dharana, 12 seconds continuously. It may look very easy. That is how they... then 12 such dharanas become dhyana. That means 144. So to hold on to an object for even 12 seconds is such a difficult task. Forget 144 seconds. 144 seconds without a single extra thought focusing on one object is such a difficult thing. No matter how much japa you have done, how much meditation you have done, it is almost impossible. You may think it is just 12 seconds. Can we not hold our mind on one spot for 12 seconds? But we can't do it. So fixing the mind on a spot is dharana. The same thing becomes dhyana when it is multiplied by 12. Then finally comes samadhi, when it indefinitely you prolong, you multiply it further by 12 times. That is how they calculate. I don't know why this figure of 12 comes, but that is a measure of our mental state from pratyahara to dharana, dharana dhyana, and dhyana to samadhi. So these are the 8 Ashtanga, 8 steps. So in general, Swamiji says yama and niyama are moral values which are for our day-to-day life. Because yama and niyama, we will always need them. All the 5 yamas and 5 niyamas which we discussed just now, we encounter every day. You need santosha every day, you need shaucha every day, you have to practice cleanliness. It's not that you practice one yama today, another yama tomorrow. Though Sri Ramakrishna used to say, you can take one yama after another. Say, for example, you take the vow of speaking or not speaking any untruth. So the vow of truth, whatever happens, I will either speak the truth or not speak at all. So that can be practiced one at a time. But normally, our day-to-day life needs induces us to follow this 5 niyamas and 5 niyamas to the extent we can do. Because it is a continuous process. That doesn't mean we don't have to practice asana. And in asana, Swamiji gives a tip. Whatever is the easiest should be practiced first. Don't challenge yourself by learning so many asanas that you end up not practicing one of them. It's better to learn one, practice that asana that makes you steady, Then you practice the next, maybe slightly difficult one, which gives you more challenges. And then you see that you can do many things. First, maybe sitting on a chair for a very long time. Even that is difficult. You feel restless. You feel like just getting up. One cannot force oneself to sit even in a chair. But after that, we may feel that let me do another asana, let me do Padmasana or let me do Sukhasana and see how long I can sit. After that, you develop some other asana. That is why we have so many asanas with increasing order of difficulty. We do it because we want to make our body as steady as possible. Sitting on a chair or an easy chair is very easy. Anybody can do it if if they really want to sit quietly. But you find disturbed children, they can't do it. One of the most challenging tasks for a parent or parents is to make the child sit, forget read, make him sit for at least half an hour. So physically practicing asana, even if it is sitting on a chair or whatever posture the child is comfortable, for a long time is a training which appears to be very simple, but it is the most difficult for most parents. Just to sit, not to make the mind concentrated. Pratyahara and other things you can't expect from children and even adults, because our minds have been restless. We have been used to activity. So if you somebody tells, what do I have to do? Oh no, you have to sit for 2 hours doing nothing. Oh, that becomes a very big pain actually. Forget asana, they will just be so restless that they just want to get up and do something. He said, how can I just sit? What do you mean just sit? So also children, you tell them you just sit here for 45 minutes and do nothing. Even if you can't study, doesn't matter, but you should not get up. So that is some kind of discipline. So that is what asana really means. Sthiram sukham asanam. So Patanjali realized that if a person cannot be physically steady and happy, then how can he be mentally steady? His mind cannot be controlled. So that is why asana, first Swamiji says, first condition, easiest position should be chosen. Second thing he says, which is medically confirmed, that the spine should be straight. The reason he gives is, it is through the spinal column that all our nervous energy is flowing. So if we want to practice pranayama, one of the pranayamas is controlling the nervous energy, Vyana Vayu. It is not just the breath. Breath is easy, that is why we start with pranayama, but controlling the nervous energy is also pranayama. So for that, the spinal column should be straight as far as possible. Because if it is bent, then the spinal cord does not allow the force to pass smoothly. And then that causes disturbance, nervous disturbance. So for the nerves to function properly, the spinal cord should function properly. Then the nervous energy uh, flows properly. That's why it is said, keep the head, neck and the chest straight, because then that is, and asana is also meant for that. We lock our legs, Padmasana and all the asanas, even Sukhasana. You see, the very fact that you are squatting and sitting, locking your legs, makes your spine automatically straight. In the beginning, you may need some support, but later on, you will find that it locks. It locks your spine in such a way that it is not allowed to bend. So that is why chest, head, and neck in a straight line. That is what asana is. So the main idea, Swamiji says, is to make the body firm and steady. So now, before we start the series of points on pranayama, Swamiji has given wonderful ideas how pranayama can be practiced. And mind you, by pranayama, he doesn't mean breathing at all. He says the pranayama which we are taught as part of our yogasana, by controlling the breathing, is not pranayama at all. So that is why he gives a comprehensive idea where all the five pranas can be controlled. How to do it, we'll discuss in the next class. Because he starts with Shankaracharya's commentary on the Shvetashvatar Upanishad. Shvetashvatar Upanishad, though Shankaracharya does not discuss much about yoga, Patanjali's yoga, because his idea was to preach Vedanta, and that also Advait Vedanta. So he assumed that yoga and all are very simple things. It is like kindergarten. After finishing the study of yoga and Sankhya and all, when you come to Advait Vedanta, uh, Shankaracharya starts his teaching. So that is why in Shvetashvatara Upanishad, there is a lot of discussion on pranayama or prana. So that Swamiji will discuss, and how Shuddhikaran in when we do puja, we purify our nerves. There are, of course, we do pranayama to begin with, the breath, but there are other ways of imagining how your nerves are getting purified. You imagine the Kundalini going up. Kundalini means the nervous energy going up from the base of the spine, it goes to the Sahasrara. All these things are not just rituals, but they are techniques which uh, help us to practice the real pranayama. Because it is a very important topic, there are about, we may need about 3 or 4 classes, because Swamiji has spoken of 2 types of prana. One is individual prana, and a new concept he is giving, which is there in Patanjali, but he brings it. He says universal prana. So he says, where do all the spiritual people get their energy? It's not that they generate or make their pranas powerful. They connect themselves with the universal prana, and that is why their words make such a difference. That is why when Jesus speaks, when Buddha speaks, they have the universal prana under their control. So we will have discussed this prana in 2 aspects. One is individual prana, prana, samana, vyana, udana. That is our prana, our body and our body's prana. But it is, Swamiji shows, it is connected to the cosmic prana. And that is the secret of Raj Yoga, how you can connect and get energy from outside of you, from the cosmos, from God, from the cosmic prana, which is all pervading. That will be the second topic. So if there are some questions, people can ask. Now, I think it is almost time. Yeah, but I answered. I answered in the beginning. See, it is not a question of householder or brahmachari or. Can you repeat the question for Zoom? The question is, one of the yamas is brahmacharya. If you come with the yama and niyama you saw, it is the third one. Asteya, satya asteya, aparigraha, brahmacharya, and there are these 5 which we discussed. So, yeah. So, brahmacharya, yeah. So, brahmacharya, as I said, every religion insists on brahmacharya, because that anything that leads, even mentally, if you dissipate your energy, it's not just physical brahmacharya, but it is mental also. Anything, if you dissipate, if the mind goes towards the object, towards objects which will distract you, obviously that much less energy you have. So not only for Raj Yoga, for to succeed in any field which requires concentration, which requires dharana, dhyana, you have to practice brahmacharya. So to the extent we can practice, that much success we'll get. But there's no hard and fast rule that it should be absolute like what Thakur practiced. Of course, they set a very high ideal, but according to our capacity, one has to practice. As simple as that. It's simple as why brahmacharya, even asteya, not taking any gifts, or aparigraha, not taking gifts. Some people practice it to the last word. They will not even take an insignificant gift. Somehow they'll refuse. They look, it appears they are very fanatical. they are not sensitive, they don't even understand, they are making a big fuss, not accepting gift. But if they are practicing 100% and they want to practice, then why should anybody stop them? So also with all other yamas and niyamas, the rule is whether you are a householder or whether one is a monk or anything, whatever you can practice, whichever of these 10 niyamas and yamas and niyamas we can practice, it is going to help the other steps, asana, pratyahara, pranayama, and all those things. That's the answer. Yeah. Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. So 12 seconds is a very big challenge. So people think, oh, yeah, yeah. It is for everyone. It's not just you. 12 seconds is not a small period of time. So 144 seconds, can you imagine? If somebody can really do it, then he'll be realized. Hmm. Not count. Actually, if it happens for, see, somebody else can count. If you are counting, that means it is not one thought. It is one, two, three, four, five. See, and the seconds move much slowly than this. One, two, three. Maybe that is the speed. So if you are counting, then you are not actually focusing on one point. So yes, one way it can be done. I don't know whether it works. They have tried that. They fixed this EEG, electroencephalograph. So they say if the thought, there is a slight change in thought. I don't know whether it is so sensitive to detect that. But maybe if there is a flat line or whatever, if there is no change or no indication that the thought has changed, then maybe others can count on behalf. That's why they do these tests on Buddhist monks and others who spend their whole life in meditation. So they try to find out if there are vibrations. That means if there are vrittis, if there is a way where others can observe our vrittis, then counting can be done. Otherwise, you simply reach that state. If your concentration becomes sharp enough, you don't even have to count. It may be 4 seconds, it may be 2 seconds. So when it comes to 12 seconds, you are in a state of dhyana or dharana, dhyana, pratyahara. Pratyahara is not counted as a, the 1 second starts from dharana actually. Then dhyana is 12, and then samadhi is 144. 144 if somebody succeeds, like Thakur used to do it. That is why he used to go into Ardha Bahya Avastha first. So that is something to do with dharana. So from dharana is to just go into dhyana and from dhyana into samadhi. So by the time he goes into samadhi, it is 144 seconds. So it was natural for him, but it is not natural for us. Hmm. Yeah, it's almost 12:05, but we have time. No, I am fine. Can have, because we stopped late. Oh, there is one question on YouTube, our Zoom. Okay. Have you had an experience of Kundalini? Yes, yes. The question is, have you had an experience of Kundalini rising? Second part. Or met someone who has aroused Kundalini? How does it feel? Acha, now the question is, have you met somebody who has raised the Kundalini? First, we have not discussed this Kundalini, so we'll postpone the answer to this question, because before knowing whether one's Kundalini is aroused, we should know what Kundalini is, what is being aroused. Okay? So it is a good question, but not right now, because Swamiji will discuss about Kundalini. So without knowing what Kundalini is, how can we say? Now some people, they say it and they feel some nervous sensation on their spine, and they will say, "Oh, today my Kundalini came up to the chest." And but then how? If you ask them, how do you know that is Kundalini? It may be just some nervous sensation which is going up and down. So Kundalini is something which has to be discussed to understand the concept, whether it has been aroused. So it is possible, yes, for yogis, the progress that they make. Kundalini, in fact, let me tell you, Kundalini is not discussed in Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, but Swamiji brings it from another spiritual practice which is known as Tantras. So the Tantra Shastra speaks of Kundalini, not yoga. Yoga never talks about Kundalini. But anyway, in Raj Yoga, Swami Vivekananda will discuss about this Kundalini, which is connected to prana. So let us now focus on the idea of what prana is. Once we understand prana, once we understand what the nervous energy is, then we will understand when does Kundalini rise. Because that is a very long topic. Let us wait till we come to that topic. Yes. Yeah, yeah. Yes. Hmm. Yes, yes. So Swadharma, if you see the Gita, the question is, Ansuya is asking, can you explain what Swadharma is? Because as I said, depending on your Swadharma, you have to decide your food, you have to decide your the practice of Yama and Niyama. Huh? So for a Kshatriya, his Swadharma is to fight. So you can't say that he has to practice Ahimsa, isn't it? He can't practice because his Swadharma needs, which Arjuna wanted to give up fighting, and Krishna tells him, no, your Swadharma will make you fight. So you have to fight. So he cannot say that I'll practice physical ahimsa. He may practice mental ahimsa. He kills not just because he gets joy to kill others, but he kills because it is his swadharma. Then it assumes a different meaning. Then ahimsa has to be understood as an attitude. So even if he's killing for swadharma, it is permitted in our dharma. Dharma Shastra, Swadharma is determines our actions, our attitudes, our stage of life. So everything is determined by Swadharma. So if your Swadharma is fighting, then you are known as Kshatriya. If your Swadharma is imparting knowledge or meditating, then you are known as Brahmana. You may be born in a Kshatriya family, but if you don't like fighting, if you think your Swadharma is not to fight and just sit and meditate, then that Swadharma of that particular person, he may be born as a Kshatriya, but he is a Brahmana, like that. So that is how the Swadharma, it's not just caste, it is beyond caste also. You can't strictly say every Brahmana has his own Swadharma. So Swadharma changes. It is duty according to guna and karma. That is the best definition. Your guna and karma, your past karma will decide your swadharma in this life. And your gunas, your qualities, and your karma. Guna karma vibhagayo. When the idea of caste, he says, I decide the different castes. I means Lord Krishna. He says the castes are determined by your guna and karma, not by your birth. So your guna may be full of fighting and a kshatriya guna, and your karma also is a kshatriya, a king, though you may be born in a Brahmin family. Or your parents may be Brahmins, but you don't have to be that. Your guna and karma will decide your swadharma. Yeah. Hard. Vast, vast. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Vast, obviously it is vast because to understand what, yeah, to understand what swadharma is, first of all, we don't even know what our swadharma is. That is why we just go on doing what comes to us. But if we try to understand our guna and karma, we'll get a hint, then we'll choose a proper career depending on our Swadharma. So if somebody, just because he sees some particular type of profession is good, but his guna and karma does not suit, and he still follows it, then he will repent. That is why Krishna is telling Arjuna, it is better to die doing your own swadharma than you do paradharma, means do somebody else's dharma. So you know you are not fit for a particular profession, and out of enthusiasm you make the wrong choice, then you suffer because it is not your swadharma. It is not according to your guna and karma. Okay. Okay. Yeah. One more question is there. Hmm.
It says the opening of the heart takes us deeper into meditative states. But when duty pulls us back, how do we stop ourselves feeling frustrated? Like the heart is opening takes you deeper to
Yeah, the
meditative states.
question here is this we have not discussed. I would rather prefer if you ask questions based on what we discussed. But anyway, since the question is asked that when the heart opens, I don't know one who is asking the question what he or she means by opening of the heart. Opening of the heart in Patanjali's Yoga Sutras or in Vedanta means awakening of the buddhi. If that is what is meant, then once the buddhi is awakened, then buddhi tells you what to do, what not to do. When you say awakening of the heart, it is not the physical heart, nor is it any other kind of heart. It is just the intuitive capacity or the buddhi which enables you to watch your sensations, as Swamiji says. Watch your sensations, watch your reactions, watch how your thoughts are coming up. So all these things can be done only by opening of the heart or buddhi. Heart is used, the word heart is used, but there is no heart there. It is just the center of the seat of buddhi. Heart is the seat of buddhi. So the question is now, once it is awakened, that means once buddhi is awakened, we feel joy or we can meditate properly. But then again, we are thrust into the world where that uh, concentration in the heart goes away. It is very natural because the more we come in contact with objects, that is why they say you have to go to solitude. If you want to stay peacefully for some time at least every day and focus on the center of your heart, which is the place where your buddhi awakens and you get peace, then you have to avoid doing things which make you extrovert. So to become introvert in not in the narrow sense, but in a positive way, if we interiorize the mind and not allow it to pratyahara means that actually pratyahara is a very good way to do that. So you withdraw from the objects, even though you are in the midst of objects, you withdraw and focus on the heart within, and then you get joy. As simple as that, but difficult to practice. Yeah. Yeah, you can ask. Yeah, you can ask. Sopan Chaudhary can ask. Or you can type. You have raised your hand, but either you can ask or if the audio is enabled, you can ask or you can type. I am not hearing. Yeah, Sopan Chaudhary, can you switch on your audio? Enable your audio is off. Okay, I have enabled it now. Oh, you can't unmute someone else. I think you can do, one who has started the session. Yeah. There is a Swapan Babu, can you just enable your audio? No, I think okay. Okay. Then it's fine. Maybe it's okay. It's okay. We can then conclude now. Huh? Yeah. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Tat Sat. Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu. Acha, in April there will not be any class because April and May I will not be here. And 9th April I'm going to Brazil, Argentina, and then USA. Coming back only on 21st May. So if the class is in the end of May, maybe otherwise it will be June. June. Yeah.